Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I know is important to many of you. It is about leadership communication. What do you do if the leaders in your organization are just bad at communicating? If they are confusing employees, causing distrust in employees, how can you as an internal communication professional help them? I'm going to answer a question from a follower in this video on this very topic. So let me read out what she sent in to me. She says, I work for a company that for the first time in a long time isn't achieving the results that it used to. Employees are feeling anxious and can feel that changes are likely coming. Last week we had a big staff meeting and it's evident that people want more transparency and communication from our senior leadership team. The Q&A section was really embarrassing. Many leaders relied on cue cards to answer questions. They either didn't answer questions properly or they got the answer totally wrong. At one point they even leaked sensitive information. Yikes. How do I tell them their performance wasn't good enough? So there is a lot in that. Let's unpack that in this video. I like this question because it's meaty, it's topical, and it links to the broader theme of how can we as communication professionals support our leaders to be better communicators themselves. So my advice on how you approach this, if you feel like your leaders are not doing a great job of communication, my advice really depends on the relationship that you have with them. So say you are not yet in a place where you feel like you can just go up and say, God, that was really crap, let's talk about it. Let's take a step back and figure out how you can give them feedback in a way that is constructive, that is helpful, and that will help to position you as a trusted advisor and someone that can help them improve their skills. So one of the parts of that question was, how do I tell the leaders that their performance wasn't good enough? So here, let's talk about the importance of data and evidence. You may not want to go and tell them your performance wasn't good enough, but what you can do is you can gather some evidence and data from around the company that you can then present to the leaders. So one simple way in this scenario, say you've done this big staff meeting, sometimes called a town hall meeting, you can do a very short survey on the back of that to see how did people feel about that event. Did they feel the leadership team did a good job in communicating the topic? Did they feel there was transparency and honesty? How satisfied are they that they got the information that they need? Whatever it is you want to find out, put together 2-3 questions and put them in a survey for employees. You can also gather some qualitative data. So qualitative data is around words and feelings and perceptions. So simply go and have some conversations with people that attended that town hall and ask them, how did they feel about it? What did they think about it? How would they describe it? What did they remember? And really get more of an in-depth feeling of how was that event and how are the leaders being perceived by employees. So in this bit, you're really trying to capture how do employees feel, because that's data in itself. And then what you can also do as well is have some conversations with employees about how this could be improved in the future. So what do they want from leaders? Do they want leaders to talk about different topics? Do they want to talk about it in a different format? Do they want to be able to submit questions in advance? Do they want to be able to do anonymous questions? Gather loads of ideas of what your audience actually needs from your leaders in terms of communication. And now you're in a position to have a conversation with your leaders, whether that's just with your CEO or with the broader leadership team, about the performance at that particular event when they were communicating. But it's not a conversation where you're saying, I think that was crap, but rather it's a data-driven conversation about this is how this was perceived in the business. And here's some interesting stats and quotes that I think we need to discuss so we can make this better in the future. So for example, you might be able to tell them, I did some research into this and 76% of employees said they felt very confused by the topics that you covered, or 85% of employees weren't satisfied with the level of honesty in that meeting. This gives you real solid data that you can present and then use that as a conversation about broader theme of communication and how we can make this better together. So you can see that this data-driven approach is quite different to you as one person saying, I don't think that went very well. You are positioning yourself as thoughtful and insightful. You've done your research and you're presenting it as a talking point, as a conversation. So they're much less likely to get defensive. They're much less likely to take it as a personal critique because it is data-driven and evidence-based. And I would really encourage you then to have an open dialogue with the members of your leadership team that are in that conversation and get their perspective. Like, how did they feel that it went? Maybe they were really aware that it was going really badly, but they didn't quite know what to do. Maybe they felt really uncomfortable being on the spot and they didn't have all the answers. So see what you can find out from their position and their perspective, because that's all going to help feed into your future planning. And really what you're going to want to do to help your leaders communicate better is to find out what your audience needs, and that's your audience research. So what do they want to see differently in the future? What would help them understand things better and feel more comfortable and be able to build trust in the leaders? And then also, how are your leaders performing? What are their strengths and weaknesses? How can you actually support them better to deliver better communication to the employees and to listen better as well? So maybe in this conversation with your leaders, you find out that one of your leadership team is just really uncomfortable when they're on the spot, when they feel like they don't have all the answers, and they're kind of very likely to splutter out something that's wrong or that is confusing. Then in that situation, you are aware that they perform badly in that particular scenario, and you can help in advance to coach them, just to say things like, do you know what, I don't actually have the answer to that right now. Let me look at that and I'll come back to you next week. Or I don't have all the information you're looking for right now, but I will address that in next week's newsletter or next month's town hall or whatever it is. Encourage your leaders to say it's perfectly fine not to have all the answers right now, but that you'll follow up and come back. So this buys them time. It stops them saying things that are outright wrong or misleading. And it's also kind of refreshing for employees to see leaders don't always have all the answers, and it's okay to admit that. Now, the other thing that I would encourage you to do, apart from just collecting data and evidence and using that as a talking point for conversations, the other thing is you should really invest time and energy into getting to know your leaders. I mean, we often talk about the leadership team as if that's one homogenous group and they're all the same. They're all going to be different. They're all going to have different strengths and weaknesses. Some of them might be really introverted, some might be really extroverted, some are great on camera, some will run away at the sight of a camera, some are brilliant at the written word, and some will waffle on forever. So it's really in your interest as an internal communicator to get to know them one-on-one, not just to understand their strengths and weaknesses, but also to be able to build up that really trusting relationship. Because ideally, as you move through this journey further down the line, you will be a little bit less reliant on collecting so much data and evidence, and you'll be more trusted to just approach them and say, that really didn't go well. Can we talk about that? And let's figure out a plan for how to make that better the next time. I once worked with a senior leader who wrote a weekly blog on the company intranet. And she was so good at communicating in the written word. She was brief, she was concise, but she was also warm and a little bit funny, and it was conversational, it was authentic. It just sounded like her. People loved it. It was really, really good. Communicating and writing was such a super strength for her. But that same leader, if you sat her in front of a camera, she just completely froze. She was really stiff, really uncomfortable. She needed a teleprompter. Like, it was terrible. That was definitely a weakness of hers. And she was absolutely open to a conversation about, this is not a great spot for you. Why don't we do some practice and work together to improve your skills to get you more comfortable on camera? So for the meantime, let's park the video content for you, but let's work together as a skill that you can improve. I mean, I'm here on YouTube. I was horrific in front of the camera when I started. Go back and watch some of my earlier videos. But it's a practice, it's a skill, it's something that you just learn. It's repetition, really. And absolutely, you can position this as something that you can help your leaders to get better with. So it's about understanding their strengths, understanding their weaknesses, and helping them to improve those weak spots. Because I often feel like if you can't communicate, you can't lead. Communication is not an optional skill for leaders. It is an essential requirement. And it's your job as the internal communicator to really help them to communicate better. You could consider collaborating with your HR department or your learning and development team to give them feedback and insights into the types of development gaps that you see in either the broader leadership team or particular leaders in terms of communication skills and training and development that they might need, because often your leadership team will have their own personal and professional development plans. So you may be able to feed into that to help them either get external support or ongoing support from you as part of that documented process of leadership improvement. Another practical way that you can support your leaders is to do role-playing scenarios with them before big important events like town hall meetings, or if you're going to film a video. This can be a bit cringe, particularly if you don't know them very well. They might be very reluctant to do it. They might feel uncomfortable, but that's all part of learning and practice. So the more comfortable you can get with them, that's why I really want you to invest in building up those relationships. You can encourage them to do the speech it with you before they go out to the employees. You can pick it apart and you can help them refine the bits that are a bit wobbly. You can help them get better. You can also help them just feel more comfortable in the delivery because they have practiced it in advance with you. And of course, your role as an internal communicator, one of the brilliant things that you bring to the business is you are essentially the bridge between employees and the leaders. You understand the employee groups far better than the leaders do. So please bring your insights, your knowledge, your understanding of your employees to the leaders when they are planning communications. They are probably thinking about what they want to say rather than what the audience needs to hear. So your role can really bring that audience-focused lens to their planning of communications. So if they're going to talk about a topic, then you can feed them the insights that you have from employees about this is what employees already know about this topic. This is how they feel about this topic. These are the kinds of things they're going to be asking you about. These are the things they are worried about. This can completely reframe the communication in terms of the messaging, the tone, the approach. And this is your quiet superpower that you bring as an internal communicator to really help your leaders position their communications in a way where they are thinking about the audience first and delivering it that way. And final bit of advice I would give when you're helping your leaders communicate better, please encourage them to tell stories. If you watch any great TED Talk, they always open with the story. They don't open with financial graph and data and PowerPoint slides that go on forever. Stories are a fabulous way to connect with your audience. Leaders often shy away from them. Sometimes they just don't know how to tell a story. Sometimes they just genuinely don't know that it's important. So you can help them to discuss their messaging, discuss the topic and tease out stories that they can tell. Maybe it's a story of an interaction they had with a customer. Maybe it's a story about when they were traveling. It could be a personal story about their family. It could be a story about something that happened in work, something to illustrate the key message at hand. It will grab the audience's attention. It will make it immediately more personable and more interesting. And it's a really effective way to help your leaders communicate better and connect with employees. All right, my lovely friends, that's it from me. If this is useful to you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps me to reach more people. And the more people that can communicate better in work, the happier I am in my life. Thank you very much. See you the next time.